Hi everybody, good morning. This is Jean here. Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I'm coming to you from my sewing room today with a beginning introduction to my new series that I'm going to be making, my first in the series of my little quilts. We're just going to be embarking on little quilts for the springtime and the summertime, either a topper or a small little quilt to get stuck into, because we don't either have the time or the energy or the funds or the materials to invest in a large project, as you know. And what I am going to be doing, according to popular opinion, is I'm going to be starting to show you how I made this little quilt behind me. It measures about 30 inches square, and I had used that obviously in sort of like a little sweet, almost, I think I used like a 30s reproduction fabric, but you could use any scraps that you have. My last video I showed you that I was going to be using a jelly roll. Now this is a half jelly roll in shades of lavender, pink, gray, and white. I believe there's 20 strips. I have 2 of these. I'm not quite sure how much I'm going to be using. But as I was saying before, I wanted to, instead of doing either a white or a cream background fabric, I wanted to change it up a bit. So I have the privilege to go shopping in my sewing room. As you know, I have a lot of fabrics, and the first thing I thought about, oh, this fabric must be 20 years old. The first thing I thought about was this little fabric. It reads cream, but as you can see, hopefully the camera will pick that up, it's a cream with a little lavender flower on it. But again, back here it reads cream, and it would be very pretty, very predictable, very safe for that. Then I thought, that's very safe and predictable. So what I did is I chose another fabric, and again, this was pretty. This is more of a lavendery fabric with little tiny white dots. And again, that reads very pretty, more of a solid against my patterned Dresden plate. The Dresden plate's going to have 20, if you want, 20 different colors in it. Our little fan blades, there'll be 20 of them. If you wanted to make it 2-color, that's perfectly fine. If you wanted to make it 3 or 4 color, that's perfectly fine. But I will have enough with my 2 lots of little tiny jelly rolls to make it scrappy like that. Everyone is a little bit different. Pieces of fabric this big, right? So then I thought, though, that would be pretty. But I actually thought, well, that, again, very predictable. I went to my color wheel, and as you know, I love my color wheel. I really do love my color wheel. And I was looking at the shades that I have in my jelly roll, which are the lavenders. And here we go, the violets right here. Is that where I'm going? Right here. And then across are my yellows, okay? So on a color wheel, you look, and that's you go to there, and that's your complementary, your split complementary. There you go. I think I'm doing it right. I can't really quite tell. But anyway, lavender and yellow is a pretty color combination. And also for the springtime. Springtime's coming. So what I did is I grabbed a yellow fabric from my stash. And here it is. And I cut out a piece. If you're asking how much fabric do I get for my background, it's about 2/3 of a yard. I cut a square approximately 22, 24 inches, something like that, 23 inches square. Very, very rough, because we will be squaring it up when we go to put our border on it. And I err on the little bit of the cautious side and make my square. I just hacked off a hunk of fabric, made it a little bit bigger. So I had yardage, so I did pull out my yardage, and here I cut it in half, and I made my 2 squares for my 2/3 of a yard or whatever it was. And I was thinking about it, and I had told my friend Jen, who's doing an applique quilt also, that when you're appliquing on a background fabric, you need pretty much to stabilize your backing, your background fabric. We're going to be either straight stitch or zigzag stitch or blanket stitch this curved top Dresden plate onto my backing fabric. So I wanted my background fabric to be a little bit more sturdy. So what I had done is, because I had the yardage, I had cut 2 of my yellow backing. Now I don't know if this will show up in the camera here, but trust me, I did a little experiment. Now this fabric is a decent enough fabric. It's okay. It's a tiny, as you can see, a little bit. It's a decent fabric. See through it just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. Having said that, it's a very nice fabric. It's not terribly thin, and it's woven very nicely. Not the incredible best quality, but it's lovely. So I had these 2 fabric pieces cut. And I thought, well, I know I will just use the yellow, the other piece, to sort of back my fabric and have 2 layers instead of doing perhaps an iron-on interfacing, which you could also use, or a sewn-in stabilizer, which you could use. So putting the wrong sides together, because it has a slight little pattern. Let me just show you what hopefully you will see. So here's my piece that I've ironed. Now, I don't know if you can see that. It's much thicker, obviously, because now I have 2 layers of fabric. But you probably can't see. But again, trust me, I have that yellow on yellow, and then I thought, well, how about, what would a bright white look like? Now, I'm fortunate enough to have quite a lot of white, cheap white muslin, bright white, not cream. And again, you probably won't be able to see it, but again, trust me, I'm going to sort of line my yellow, and I don't know if you can see, it's a little bit brighter. It would take a blind person to see this. But it's a little bit brighter when it's backed with my white, okay? Now that's what I'm going to be stabilizing my piece of fabric with. My background fabric is going to have this white lining, as it were. Now again, if you wish, you could use an iron-on stabilizer, like an iron-on interfacing, or a sew-on interfacing, just sew it around, just so you have an extra layer to grab our stitches, our applique stitches, which we're machining. I'm showing you how to do it with a machine. Either if you do have a straight stitch, we're just going to straight stitch it, or I'm going to change out my Juki. I have to get my other computerized machine, which has either this zigzag or the blanket stitch. And when you do those stitches, they tend to shrink your background, and your background will be puckery if it's just 1 layer of fabric. I hope that makes sense to you. So I'm going to be using my white fabric. Now I was thinking, if you are a beginner, you might not have, you go, oh no, I don't have white fabric. Do I have to run out to the store to get it? And I'm thinking, this is not very conventional, but maybe you have an old sheet, or maybe you have an old rag, white, or maybe you have an old pillowcase. It's fabric. This is reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Use up our stuff. This is an old pillowcase that I have, or an old pillow sham that I had. And I have a load of pillowcases. I love pillowcases. It's 100% cotton. It's really quite nice. I could just unpick that, just cut it open and make it the size, and I have a nice lining. Now again, if you had a darker fabric for your backing, if you had a dark fabric, you could use anything. And I've made this, as I said, about 24 inches square. And I'm going to be making my Dresden plate applique that size right there. You could have not so much background by using a fat quarter, say an 18 by 22, or an 18 by 18 inch fat quarter. If you have a fat quarter hanging around, or 2 fat quarters, again, to line it. And again, this is all about not being exactly precise. So many quilters are daunted, like, oh, I have to cut it at so-and-so and 3/8 of an inch. The only thing we are going to be concerned about is cutting out our Dresden plates and then making the actual curve, because this is the template in whatever manufacturer that I have shown to use in my previous video. And again, you need a good little ruler because this has the flat top. And when you make a sort of a traditional Dresden, it ends up a pointed, finished edge Dresden. We're not doing that. I'm going to show you how we're going to be cutting very carefully, very slowly. Put it on turtle. Don't put it on rabbit. We're going to be cutting out our Dresdens, and I'm going to go over to my cutting table from my jelly rolls, and you will see how I cut out my Dresden fans, 20 of them, one at a time. So I'm going to go over to my cutting table. I have a close-up of my quilt here that we're going to be making, if you haven't seen that up close. All right, here's my background, which I'll be doing in my yellow, my checkerboard border, and my 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, 20 fans, okay? Now, I've already done one. So here is our fan, and as you can see, it has the curved top, okay? Now, I've already cut one to show you how we get this raw edge curved top, but when it's put into the seams here, this is the size it's going to end up. Now, here's my little prototype here, my little sample, and as you can see there, with my 1/4 inch seam, and my 1/4 inch seam here attached at this point and at this point, and then when we get to that point to sew our blades together, I will show you how very important it is to maintain our 1/4 inch seam. Now, if you haven't measured your 1/4 inch on your machine, or you don't have your 1/4 inch foot, or you don't have your 1/4 inch guide, I recommend that you do that, because to get this Dresden plate lovely and flat, the trick is to have your 1/4 inch seam. And again, when we get to it, this circle down here doesn't matter. We're going to cover this up. It's what is up here that matters, and this is our blade that we're going to be working with. So again, as you can see, the instructions I'm going to be giving are without my seam allowance, but how I made the curve, okay? Now, I know there are templates that you can get that have the rounded edge, but I don't have one, or I don't know where it is if I do have one. So this is how I'm going to show you how to make it from my jelly roll. Now, the jelly rolls, or a strip that you're cutting, again, 20 by 2.5 inch by 8.5 inch. That's what you need for our thing. But I just have a jelly roll. So again, what I'm using is my Dresden plate template here. And I'm putting my fabric away from me, okay, with a square edge down here. Now, what I'm going to be doing is this Dresden plate obviously is wider, as you can see, is almost 1/2 inch wider at the 8 inch than my 2.5 inch jelly roll. So, well, what in the world are we going to do? So what I'm doing is I'm taking this template and I'm putting it on the 7 inch mark, okay? There's my 7 inch. It is slightly wider than my 2.5 inch square, but I'm going to sort of split the difference at the top of my 2.5 inch square, and there's my dark line there, and it's just a hair, a sliver, down to about 1 inch, but that's okay. As I said, I'm going to split the difference, making sure it's nice and lined up here. You can see, I'm going to do it right in front of me. As you can see, there's my 7 inch, and that's right in the center. Okay, and I'm taking my rotary cutter, holding that, and then it starts to cut right about there. I'm going across, moving that, 7 inch, match it up. Be careful when you're doing this, split the difference, and make that other diagonal cut, okay? And we end up with a fan that looks like that. Now, you could do a couple of them at a time if you wanted to, but whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over like this, okay? And it's not quite, as you can see, it's not quite that edge, but this is fine. What I'm going to do is I have a pen or a marker, and I'm going to go down about 3/4 of an inch from the top. Just 3/4 of an inch, okay? Right from the top, put that 3/4 of an inch mark right at the top there. Just make a little line there across. I'm just going to do that on both sides. About 3/4 of an inch over, okay? So I have my little marks like so. Then I'm going to just fold it in half with the right sides together, pretty sides together. And that mark is right there. Line that up. And then I'm going to take my scissors from that line right there, and I'm just going to make a curve just up to the top. No big deal. It's just making a curve. Nice sharp scissors. Now, there we go. Look at that. Now, if you want to, maybe that is a little bit too pointy for you, if you want to go back and soften it. But for me, it's okay, because now what our blade is, remember when you saw it on my quilt, is this is going to be our seam allowance on this edge here to that point and to that point there. And there you go. We have our lovely curved top. Now again, I'm doing 20 of these. There's no rush. If you have scraps, you can do each one individually, or what you can do, if you really are motivated, what you could do is you could take a piece of card and you could actually make a template as such, go around like so. Oh, it's a little bit crooked. My hands are shaking. Like this. You get the idea. Cut that out, and there's your template if you wanted to do that. And then just cut out your round tops, 20 of them. So that's your homework for this week. I hope you're going to enjoy this little tutorial here to make our lovely little Dresden plate topper. Oh, it's so sweet, so pretty. So again, mine's going to be yellow and lavender with a checkerboard. We'll come to that when we do. So follow along and let me know how you're doing. And yeah, I hope you have fun, and thank you for joining me, folks. And yeah, as always, love from the Trueloves. See you later. Bye-bye.